Let's take just a few deep breaths. Do you all know the breath that Dr. Weil gave to help stimulate the vagus nerve? Do you know what I'm talking about? No. Okay, should we do it together? I'll tell you how we do it, and then you just do it at your own pace. It was my mother that brought my attention to this, and so she, especially later when she had become quite ill with cancer, she'd had trouble with her breath, so she'd asked me to sit and do the elemental breaths with her, but also this breath. And so it's a really good one. I use it. I've always had trouble sleeping from as long as I can remember, but this breath does help relax the system. It kind of taps into the vagus nerve, which is the one that we tap into for meditation. And, you can kind of feel that certain lightness from stimulating it. But I want to just do this briefly. And first I'll just say towards the one, but let's do the breath and we'll come back to the invocation. So the breath goes like this. We breathe in 4, so it's kind of a sharp breath to get your breath all in. You hold 7, breathe in through the nose, 4, hold 7, breathe out through the mouth, 8. Okay, shall we try it? Okay, so let us begin. The breath is usually done no more than 3 times, not necessary. You may feel, I can actually feel the pulsing of that nerve. It's kind of on the left side of the body. And as you do it, use it when you need to be. It just doesn't take very long, but it can relax the whole system and stimulate that vagus nerve. So let us say the Sufi invocation together. Towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Feel the blessings of Murshid and all the holy beings, the wise ones. We invite you to come here and guide us and be with us today. I want to draw your attention to this statue. It's new. And it's a pelican. I hope you can see that has its head pointed down. Guess where the beak is pointing? The vagus nerve. The other thing about it is it's out of dolomite and it's from Zimbabwe. There were some people that brought this art to our area with the artist showing us, the whole process of getting the stone, rolling it down the hills, gathering it, the artist picking the stones. And they brought 2 artists that showed us how to, how they did this stone. Now, some of it's rough, you can see, and some of it's very polished. There's a little eye, I'll show you. I don't know if you can quite see it. Here's the eye, right here, and then there's the beak. This is also a very special gesture because there's an ancient tradition, and it kind of relates to joy in a certain way. So there's an ancient story. It's almost like a scripture that was found, and it's about the pelican. And in some churches, Christian churches, you may see a pelican, and the pelican has its wings spread out and lots of little chicks kind of under, near its belly, and its beak like this. And the story is it was during a time of famine, and the pelican mother wanted to feed its young. And so she took their beaks have a peculiar shape at the end, but it's made for breaking open shells and sort of spearing fish. So the mother used her beak to kind of poke a hole, kind of where the vagus nerve is, but in the heart area, piercing her own, not piercing it, but in that heart area, so that she could bleed a little bit to feed her chicks, and that is such a beautiful story of, we always talk about in the universal worship self-sacrifice, that Jesus did the same thing. And so this image, I keep learning from this sculpture. It's kind of amazing, but that image reminds me of giving to others and surrendering, and no matter how difficult life gets, those are just ways of uniting in the joy of resurrection after our crucifixion. So there's so many things to learn just in that one image and in that one story. So watch for that when you go to churches. You may see stained glass windows of that image or something like that. So today, the subject is sharing joy, but I started thinking, oh gosh, I hope I didn't sucker them into coming to this class with sharing joy. So I thought, well, it could have been becoming joy, or we could have said growing joy, or we could say understanding joy, or we could have said experiencing joy. But I called it sharing joy because it came from a special quote, and we'll hear that later. But I want to read a couple quotes of Murshid's about joy from the Nurtan. He says, "In the heart of sorrow, there is a seed of joy. Sorrow enables us to feel joy." And I think about that because, in my saddest moments, I remember telling Joe, it feels like my heart is just bursting open. It's just been cracked. It's not a shell anymore. And I would affirm, I'm just going to let the light grow and emerge from that and let the heart get bigger, kind of like Humpty Dumpty. I'm not going to try to piece it together. I'm just going to allow it to get bigger and more open. And so sorrow enables us to experience joy. It can be both, commingled. Rumi talks about that commingling. Another quote from the Nurtan, "My sorrow, forget not, once again joy will arise." So we have to remind ourselves not to it's not like we've moored our boat at a certain port and we have to live there forever. We have to set sail and eventually we can reach this, this beauty of allowing ourselves to move on beyond sorrow and towards joy. Sometimes it's just reminding ourselves, Murshida Vera gave this practice, I remember. And she said the best way to heal oneself, in this instance it was suspected abuse, is to concentrate on an object of beauty that is appealing to the one that has been wronged. So that can be a very good cure for us when we're in those moments of sorrow or depth of sadness. Think of something beautiful, or taste something beautiful, or I don't know what's happening here. Nori Basir, I'm getting these messages. But anyway, taste something beautiful. Look at something beautiful. And try to bring it into your environment, even if you go to the internet and search for a beautiful something to look at. Your environment, hopefully where you live, also you can go outside and find that. So again, my sorrow, forget not. Once again, joy will arise. Joy is not something brought from outside. It belongs to us. But it manifests to us as a result of certain actions. So in this instance, Murshida Vera said, look at something beautiful. But it also could be do something kind for someone else, gets us out of ourselves. Create a beautiful little space in one's home. Whatever that is, it just helps get us out. And Murshida's going to talk more about that. So one more quote, and kind of was the incentive for this class and the title, "True pleasure lies in the sharing of joy with another." And you probably know this yourself when you see something beautiful, or you hear something beautiful, or you taste something beautiful. It's our impulse to want to share it with those we love. And so that is something to remember. It is a way of bringing about joy. And then he goes on to say this, and these are at the end of the class. I'm not going to really pause for practices, but I'm going to ask some questions at the end, and if there's time, maybe we can have a little interaction. It's a good way to learn and remember things. So this is one of the quotes that I thought was so important. A person who has a keen perception can win hearts of both the foolish and the wise because of understanding them both. Well, how can we? Well, first of all, we might be a person of great insight, but we might also understand foolishness because we ourselves have been foolish and we've learned from it. And we also hopefully have had those moments of wisdom that have entered our mind and heart. So a person who has keen perception can win the hearts of both the foolish and the wise because of understanding them both. Important. Keen perception. Then Murshid goes on to say, the mind that has a touch of feeling is brilliant like a diamond. And so some of us, we spent a year or so ago this great thing sort of diagramming, where is the consciousness? Murshid talks about it like a coconut or a shell, consciousness covered by mind, covered by heart, covered by body. So, now he's talking about a diamond that has touched feeling is brilliant like a mind that has touched feeling is brilliant like a diamond. And then he says, it has a liquid quality. So imagine a diamond that's become liquid. It's like the ocean. For the warmth of feeling liquefies the crystal-like mind. So it's this softening, sort of the massaging of the heart and the mind. A person with such a mind shows this quality in what we call wit. We could also call it humor, humorous insight. And also in tact, so being tactful about things, being considerate. Qadir is what it's called in Sufism. Qadir, consideration. Wit is a play of delicate feelings, of humor or joy, and the thought which forms and manifests in speech and our actions. It's a delicate feeling of humor or joy, and the thought which comes and manifests in speech or action, or both, we could say. And I like the way he starts to explain how this plays out in our lives and in our interactions. He says, it's an artful way of winning those who have subtle perception. And think about this as he says this, because we've all been in these situations. When 3 or 4 people are sitting together and a serious person comes and sits down among them, it's like a rock, hard and stiff and devoid of any sense of humor. This kills even the atmosphere. And so we've been in situations like this where we may be even having fun and joking, telling stories, and someone comes like this. And what happens? We get quiet, and somehow we find a reason to get out of the room if we can. It's like, I think I need a drink of water. I need to excuse myself for the lavatory or whatever. So, we have to be conscious of, pay attention when you're in a room when people are trying to exit it. You want to make sure you kind of change things up. So then he goes on to say, however, when a person, even if they're a stranger, joins a group and shows that they possess an inventive way to create humor, such a person wins over everyone in a few moments. The mentality of a witty person can be called the dancing mind. And so we were talking about the water element earlier, but also the air element, the dancing mind. And to have a witty mind is a wonderful manifestation of nature. It's a great quality. And a witty person can make words dance and their phrases give a symphony of joy. And I'm just going to point over here because you can't really see him because he's behind this lamp, but his head's right there under that lamp. That's the good example. He always gives a reason for people to, turns a phrase, says something very witty, even to strangers, and he immediately wins them over. I become like a puddle in the corner because he's so wonderful in that way. He also knows how to be quite serious. But, if there's a model in your life, just sort of noticing it and sort of involving that. Some people may enter with a sense of that they purposely trip or start to fall off a chair. That kind of can bring humor back in the room. So I'm not asking you to be clowns, but I'm asking you to be sensitive. Murshid goes on to say, excuse me for just a moment, we might say that there are two principal mentalities, one which is called a living mind and the other which is called a dead mind. A living mind will show its life by its creative and perceptive qualities. Now here's another example. I always think my mom was such a great teacher. She was my guru in some ways. My mother always found a way to connect with people. So here's an example. She goes into the store, she's at a checkout stand, and someone is really grouchy and kind of hateful to her. She doesn't react in kind. What she would always do, which she'd say, "Why, that's a beautiful ring you're wearing." And she meant it. It wasn't like she was being insincere, or, "Oh, your hair looks great," or, "Those are fun earrings," or, "Has it been a long day?" And somehow, by the time she left, people were practically moving from their station to come around and hug her in just a short exchange. So she always found a beautiful way to connect with people. Even if they were sour, it was almost like she took it as her position to kind of lift them up somehow. So think about that. How can we lift each other up? And lift it up in light. I was talking with a friend recently at lunch, and there were 3 of us out, and we were, went out for a fun day of museum hopping and having lunch. And one of them, and it's not the first time this has happened. These 2 friends of mine I brought together. They don't know each other well, but she was talking about, and as I said, this has been a evolving subject of a friend of hers that's ill and has cancer, and then she started, the mea culpa, like, she might as well been flailing herself. And I said to her, we don't know when, and we don't know where, and we don't know how, but we're all in the process of moving in that direction. We don't know how far the cliff is from where we fall off of it. And I said, but let's give a moment of thinking of your friend instead of, and I might have even used the words because I can be kind of direct. It's tough on people. Don't do woe is me. Let's think of her and hold her in the light. And you don't help people by feeling sad for them. You help people by bringing light into the situation and holding them in that light and prayer. And so try to remember that. Now, I don't need to tell all of you. You know this probably better than I do, but I think it's an important thing. And for us as Sufis, these opportunities will arise in our lives when we're meeting with people who are not Sufis. We don't have to say, oh, my Murshid says this, or the teachings, but we can kind of turn their mind so they can start to feel the light. And Murshida Vera, again, a lesson she always gave. She said, never go into a hospital room to visit someone ill with a sad face. Always go light, and bring optimism and sun. And I know I've told you, she always said, do this, even if you have to hold your left nostril, breathe through the right to get that radiant sun breath happening. She said the optimism and joy will do everything for people. And love. Love is also a great cure. A living mind will have it. So let's see. Let me get back to the point where I was okay, brilliant. Okay. I'm going to go back for a moment. A living mind will show its life by its creative and perceptive qualities. The pleasure that we derive from a clear mind and a living mentality is a pleasure that cannot be compared with the pleasure that belongs to this earth. So we're touching something beyond the earth to share with people. A brilliant intellectuality imparts the pleasure of flying in the air, again, the mind realm, maybe even going into the etheric realm and pulling that string of the mind realm through. It lifts above the earth. It lifts us above the earth. The thinker is like a bird that flies in the air. And the joy of the bird that flies in the air is beyond comparison to the pleasure of the animal that walks on earth. So we need both. We need both for balance, but also getting real dogged or fixated on things isn't helpful for us. As Murshid said, we have to, in the beginning quotes, it's kind of like we have to kind of keep moving. Even in sorrow, we can move towards joy. To learn the lesson of how to live is more important than any psychic or occult learning. Every day, we think we've learned a lesson. But if we had, the world would have become a heaven for us now. So we have to keep learning. We have to keep growing. We have to keep moving. Murshid also says to us, we may seek higher knowledge or higher things, but the very smallest thing, which seems as nothing compared to the higher knowledge, is to control the creatures of the mind. I love that phrase, the creatures of the mind. What are those creatures? We all have them. Maybe self-doubt, at times anger, at times sadness, depression, fear. They're creatures of the mind. In Tibetan Buddhism, the highest tantric yoga, Vajrayana, is transforming those things and using other things like prayer or a visualization, which is kind of what Murshida Vera was saying, to take the power of something negative and transform it into something positive. And in a way that's hidden in these words of Murshid's. I'll read it again. It's very important. We may seek the higher knowledge or higher things, but the very smallest things, which seem as nothing compared to the higher knowledge, is to control all the creatures of the mind. When once is learned and acted upon is greater than all. So that's very important. They say, well, that's also Buddhist, isn't it? Mindfulness meditation, observing the mind, the actions of the mind, the tendency of the mind. And I'll tell you, a wonderful biofeedback for the mind is the body. Notice where there's discomfort or imbalance. That's why yoga is so good, because we can find balance, we can stretch. Instead of getting constricted in our bodies, we can stretch, become limber. Okay. And Murshid says, with an exclamation point, and he rarely uses them, this is a great step. Again, controlling the creatures of the mind. And again, I want to say to people, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to have fear. These are natural human feelings. If you're living there long term, please observe things. Are you exercising enough? Are you sleeping and rising at regular intervals? Are you eating properly? And if you're doing all those things, then please maybe consult a doctor. I think there are some medical reasons why people are dealing with this. I'll give you an example. So my physician, my GP in Kansas City, was a high school friend. And he knew me well from high school. And I went in and I said, oh my God, Steve, I can't tell you. I've just been so down and I can't, usually I can snap myself out of it. And he said, well, that's not like you. Let's do some blood test. Sure enough, I had an underactive thyroid. And one of the conditions of that can take one into depression. And so I couldn't snap myself out of it. All the talking and thinking and skill set, there was something medical. So check yourself and talk to your doctor. You can get help, and there's no shame in that. My own father had mental health issues. That was why my parents separated when my sister and I were very, very young. But it was in his later life that he realized, he said, I shouldn't have any shame of this. This is like, I'd have to take my medicine because some people with mental health issues, and if you deal with people, some of you may be working with people with mental health issues. That may be your field, and sometimes feeling bad feels good for people. When they start to feel good, it doesn't feel quite right. They don't recognize themselves, and there'll be the tendency to either have shame about needing medical help or diverting back to this other familiar feeling. But my father, God rest his soul, and it was very late in life that he understood, if I had diabetes, I'd have to take medication. If I had heart disease, I'd have to take medication. I don't know why I don't just take, and he did, and he got better, and his doctors really worked with him. So that also I want to bring into the conversation, because I don't want to be Pollyannish. I know what it's like to have mental illness in the family. And I know what it's like to feel sad and not feel like I can get myself out of it. But I got myself help, and you need to too. Thyroid or other blood things, and the blood tells everything now these days, so they have great tests. So please help yourself if you feel you're not well. So now this is a great story. I love it. I love it. I hope you love it as much as I do. Joe is my Murshid too. Mom was my Murshid. Joe's my Murshid. All of you are my Murshid. So anyway, this is a story that Murshid tells, and he's good at that, giving us lessons through storytelling. And he says, there is an Eastern parable of a dog going to a certain town. His journey was a very long one, and it used to take 2 to 3 days as a rule, and yet he arrived before sunset. The dogs of that town were all very surprised to see him so soon. And he said, yes, the dog said, it is a very long journey, and it was a very long journey. But I attribute my speed to the kindness and help, listen to this, kindness and help of my fellow dogs. Since I left home, whenever I felt tired and tried to stop for a moment for rest, 4 or 5 dogs would run up and bark and want to bite me. So I had to run on without staying to rest in a place, to search for food. And so it went, and at every place I came to, until in the end, I arrived here at my destination. All right. So thank you, dogs. Thank you, all the stuff in life that nips at you, that hurts you. Is it Atisha? Or is it Shanti Dave who says, think of those that hurt you and harm you as the great guru who comes to teach you strength and courage. Shall I say it again? Maybe no one else has people in their lives that do that, but I'm going to say it again for my own benefit. Would you like to hear that quote again, or shall I go on?
Again.
Okay. Think of those that hurt you and harm you as the great guru has come to teach you strength and courage. Here's an example. So sometimes, as you know, there can be competition in the workplace, right? There can be jealousies, there can be a little power play here and there. And I have to say that's happened to me in my life. And I took that quote to task for many years during my career. And I will also say within Sufi circles it can happen. We're not above that. There can be this categorization and eagerness to get somewhere, and jealousy if someone got somewhere and you didn't. But here's the thing. I listened to this teaching. Think of those that hurt you and harm you as the one that's come to teach you strength and courage. And so I tried to always be considerate. I mean, I know how to do the little if I have to. So, it's enough. And usually I can say it's enough. I'm removing myself for now. But in the end, I always tried to be considerate and friendly and interested in people and their lives. And I always tried to take the time to listen. Well, I also learned that term frenemy, because that's true. And Since my retirement, it's very interesting. The people that sort of did that the most, and I happened to work, we were a department of all women, mostly we had part-time male professors, but one of them, when her mother was about to die, she's calling me, what am I to do? And I said, I knew they were Catholic. I said, get the rosary out and sit with her and just pray it. And be sure to let her know she's been a really good mom and a good example. But the idea that someone from my professional career at the college would turn to me for that, and there was conflict there. But she felt comfortable enough to reach out in that moment, and that's what I hope, that every enemy becomes a frenemy and then becomes a friend. I just try very hard to do that, and you probably all have examples, and at the end you can share with us as well. But remember this little doggy, how he thought all those people that were coming and biting and snarling at him were actually helping him along his way. And when that happens in our lives, pause and think, what's the lesson here? What am I to learn from this? So from the little parable above, Murshid says, this illustrates the animal nature. Our selfishness shows itself in wanting to get the better of others. If we develop humanity, we should do differently. We should be satisfied with a slice of bread if there's another one in need. But as it happens, that even when we are fed ourselves, we do not wish anyone else to share the food. Now, I'm a little bit like the dog. I don't even like people looking at my food. So there is I don't know where that came from. But anyway, I just want you to know. I'll also say, nope, we'll order some more. You can't have mine. So I'm weird about food. Full admission. But Murshid says, the human heart can only be really satisfied by knowing that the other person is happy. And we know that's true. With the people we love, we can practice with them first. When they're sad, we feel that. But then again, is there a way without shaming people or pulling them out of the situation too quickly? Can we slowly turn things for them, and bring some light and happiness into the situation? Sometimes that's just giving the space for them to be, but attentively. I'm not advocating to change everything for everyone. Sometimes it's important for people to stay where they are for the moment, for the day, for the week. But he says true happiness lies in the sharing of joy with another. From the day we realize this, we begin to act as human beings. And Murshid is always emphasizing this idea of human beings, being human beings. He goes on to say more about it. He says, sages have always repented of all things that make them subject to their animal nature. It is human beings that repent. The animals are pleased with everything that they do. The wrongdoer can become righteous at any moment if one only makes up their mind. The difficulty is the difficulty is making this change of mind. So that's important for us to recall. Do we repent? Do we, I think I've told you this, Pir Vilayat during retreats, he would have us reflect on those things, transgressions of our own. We didn't admit them out loud. We only had to admit them to myself, yourself, everyone's self. And he'd get us up very early in the morning during retreat. And he had us kneel, if we could, on one knee and have like a sword and make this commitment to make a change. The sword of truth, Yahak. Also, when we would take the teachings with the Dalai Lama, probably in the United States, I don't recall that he did this when we saw him in Louisville, but in India, we have to be at the temple at 3 a.m. And then he has us do the same thing when we recite the Bodhisattva vows. Everyone's on one knee. If they can, the elders can sit. And we're sitting on the ground. There's no chairs or, we're not in an auditorium. It's cold. We're in the Himalayan mountains. There's snow and we're on the stones doing this, but we do it because we feel committed to making these vows. And the vows, of course, of the bodhisattvas, that the willingness to take on the sorrows of the world and return happiness to others. It's not like we're self-harming, but we can see that there's a lot that needs to be healed. And there's that practice, you all know it, I think, Tonglen, of taking on and then giving back, receiving the things that are not wholesome in the world. And even in ourselves, it can start with oneself, breathing that in, allowing it to fall upon this fire in the heart and be transformed into light and give that back out again into the world. So it's a good practice. But these are all part of what Murshid, Murshid, when he traveled, he met with all kinds of holy people after the death of his grandfather, and he went into the Himalayas, and he talks about meeting with this various holy people. They weren't all Sufis. So he's taken many teachings from many traditions. So this idea of, again, the wrongdoer can become righteous at any moment if one makes up their mind. The difficulty is to make a change of mind. So again, the creatures of the mind, do we let them run rampant or do we try to change them and control them? The next thing is to carry out this change of mind. How can I apply this? Can I be mindful to catch myself and respond in a different way? But the contentment and the perfect resignation, I have to go back. Revolutions and harmony, war and peace are all parts of the whole being. They're all there. We know that. Inside and outside, we witness it. But contentment and perfect resignation open up the harmonious feeling and brings the divine will into harmony with our will. And I thought that was interesting the way he phrased it. I kind of wanted to change it, like our will in harmony with the divine will, but he said it brings the divine will into harmony with our will. It really is very different if you concentrate on that phrase. And so let's think about that. The divine will, when we make the commitment to change, maybe that's calling upon the divine will to come in and help us. Okay? Our blessing now becomes a divine blessing. Our words, divine words. Our atmosphere, divine atmosphere. Although we may seem to be limited beings, for our will becomes absorbed into the whole, and so our will becomes the will of God. Oh, may it be so. Wouldn't that be something? We can be pioneers in this on the earth. A person alone has seen something beautiful, who has heard something harmonious, who has tasted something delicious, who has smelled something fragrant, may have enjoyed it, but not completely. The complete joy is in sharing those things in life that bring joy with others. And so, you know how that is. You taste something, it's like, taste this, Or look at the beautiful sunset, or did you see that beautiful flower? However it comes, there's a beautiful, and I won't be able to quote it, but there is a beautiful, it's called, I think it's you can look it up, the aspiration for, prayer for aspiration and the arising of bodhicitta, and there's beautiful phrases from that says, may all beings have comfortable beds to sleep on. May all beings have good food. And it says also, may I become the cause of that. What amazing. May I become the cause of beings have a place to rest their heads. May I become the one that helps be a bridge to cross over. May I offer beautiful food. It's just such a beautiful prayer. I'll see if I know I have it in my files. I'll attach it here and make a note to read that. Okay, so I'm going to pause here because it's a lot of information. I want to check my time. We have 15 minutes. And I want to offer a few things. These are for especially murids in our circle. These will become the practices for the month. So you'll have to print this and read it or look at it online. But I wanted to draw some Rumi quotes in because I don't know about you. When I have these times where I feel maybe I'm a little stuck or caught in my own self-thoughts, that, becomes like that cage or the creatures of the mind, as Mersha talks about, I usually turn to Rumi because he is someone that shows us how through great sorrow, great disappointment, great loss, there's love. There's love. And so I've pulled these quotes in because they speak of both sorrow and joy, and they're not as opposites, but they're companions. And so that's really true. They're companions on this path of being human. And he encourages, Rumi does as he did, to embrace our grief as a necessary step for finding and moving towards true joy. Because when we have no fear, when we have no fear of dying or feeling sad or looking at something that's horrific, what can hurt you? There's examples of this in many teachings. What can hurt us? Nothing, because God is with us. So here's 2 quotes by Rumi. Sorrow prepares us for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that that new joy can be found a space to enter. Wow. Sorrow prepares us for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of our house so that new joy can find space to enter. And he also says, this is Rumi, when you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving through you, a joy. Joe, do we still have the seven suggestions of Rumi on our fridge, or did we move that? Yeah, go look, see if it's there. Have you heard those, the seven, what is he called? In our other fridge? Yeah. I can find them quick on this. Can I share them with you? Because they're beautiful. You ready? Let me find them real quick. What does he call those? 7 suggestions. What's the word he uses? They're not rules.
Now I'm on the 8 thoughts that turn the mind. So now you got
The 8 thoughts that turn the mind is also a good one. Okay.
you're
Advices, that's what it's called. So number 1, there's 7 of them. In generosity and helping others, be like a river. In generosity and helping others, be like a river. In compassion and grace, be like the sun. In concealing others' faults, be like the night. In modesty and humility, be like the soil, or we could say be like the earth. In tolerance, be like the ocean. Either appear as you are, or be as you appear. Either appear as you are, or be as you appear. To thine own self be true. It's very beautiful, and in Turkey these quotes are everywhere. And we have it on a magnet and a little card, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So think about those things. I can also post that if you'd like for me to. It's very important teaching. So let's open the floor up. Conversation.